Awesome. And if you want to turn, I want to go through a story tonight with you. Turn to Luke chapter 10. And this is a little story that was put on my mind a number of weeks ago that I really would love to share with you. It's a lesson that I've learned here at Saanich, and I've learned it many, many a times, and it's been drilled into my head, so I figured, hey, I better depart with it. And if you've ever read this story, you may know where I'm going. But in Luke chapter 10, Jesus has an interaction with two ladies, and one that Jesus declares that he says that she's chosen the best thing, the good portion, the one thing that's necessary. And in contrast, Jesus talks to another woman that says that she is distracted, and this idea of distracted living brings a lot of anxiety and trouble for her, and Jesus helps correct this. And so we're going to look at this story because I believe that God has something to say to us tonight and gleaning from His truth. And so I want to read this story. And we're starting in verse 38 of Luke 10, and then we will pray and dig in further. It says this: Now they went, this is Jesus and His disciples, they went and entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed Him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to His teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. So she went up to Him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve all alone? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. Will you pray with me? God, we thank you so much for your love and your grace, and that you are such an amazing God, such a God that leads, such a God that provides. Father, I thank you so much for my Canadian brothers and sisters sitting in this room. I thank you what they've meant to me and my family over these last 3.5 years. God, I hope that tonight you meet us all right where we are, that, Father, that you would unite us under you, that, Father, that you would send your Spirit to this place and open up our eyes, give us wisdom, Father, as we learn something potentially new about yourself. Father, if we just need a reminder, God, I pray that this reminder would stick. God, I believe that what your word shares is life, is life transforming. God, it's truth, and I just pray that you would be with us here in this place, and all God's people said, Amen. I don't know if you're anything like me, but I am a fantastic driver, and if you are, I'm also really humble, but if you're anything like me, you're a fantastic driver, but you drive incredibly distracted. Like, I get distracted like by a nice car or like a cool house, or like as a butterfly flies across like my windshield. I'm just like, oh, hey, just going into lanes, no changing, it's that. And I was reminded of this story as I was thinking about like being distracted. My wife and I guess girlfriend at the time, we were dating since high school, and so, we went out to a restaurant, as we did back in the day, right? Because now we have kids, we don't ever get to do that anymore. No, but we were out and about, and we went to a kind of a fancier place. Don't worry, I paid. And then as I'm driving her home, we're having this moment together in the car, right? It's just like I'm gazing into her eyes. She's kind of looking weird at me, because I'm just so entranced by her beauty, right? I was like, oh, you're so beautiful, and I love you so much. And it was this great moment we were sharing. And as we're driving, there's a point in Vancouver where if you miss your turn, there's one last exit that if you miss it, you essentially get hurled into like Portland. And so it's like the last exit keeps you on the Washington side, and we would have been home in like 10 minutes. But of course, because I'm so distracted by my wife's beauty and her gracious spirit, I just blow right past my exit. I'm just like, oh, okay, which basically means if you've ever been in that area, we're driving over the I-205 bridge, which is massive, and it takes you all the way into Portland. You have to like go into where the airport is and like flip a huge U-turn and then drive all the way back. So it extended our time together by like 45 minutes. I just couldn't stand to let her go. I just wanted to be in the car with her for so much longer. That's what it was. It was not that I was distracted, of course. But distraction like that, sometimes it's pretty casual, right? It's pretty mundane, if you will. It's a little extra gas. It's a little extra time with the people that you care about in your car. But I also think that sometimes distracted living and the focus of kind of the thing or the busyness, right? That focus on the things of life, the have-tos in life, that those things and that way of living can actually cause our life to slip through our fingers. And that we can actually even look back through that and kind of ask the question, like, wow, like, what happened? Or we look back on life, we're like, where did the time go? You look back and almost wonder, like, how did I get here? And maybe some of you tonight are asking that exact question, like, what has happened to my life over the last little while? It just feels like just yesterday, right? We think of just yesterday. Maybe for some of you, the kids are all grown up now, or maybe they're growing up way too fast. Like Jeremiah, my 5, almost 6-year-old is like a 16-year-old. It's like freaking me out because he's way too smart for his own good. And so the things he says, it's like looking in a mirror and I'm like, I'm in so much trouble, right? Like, whoo, he's grown up way too fast for me, right? Or you look around and you wonder what happened to that sleek, slender, energetic self of yesteryear, right? You're like, what happened, right? You just things happen, slips away. Or maybe you open up your calendar and it's like immediate anxiety and stress because there's something on the calendar every single night for a month straight and there's no end in sight. Right? This idea of being so busy, I believe that God has something to say about this kind of lifestyle. I believe that God has something to say to us about a life of busyness and distraction. As I studied this story, it really kind of helped me prioritize a bit. It kind of put things back in perspective for me a bit because I was reminded to trade my distraction and busyness for simplicity and relationship. Because simplicity and relationship are always the things that are going to matter at the end of the day. At the end of the day, simplicity and relationship are always going to be the things that matter. Now, in Luke's account, this is really the first time we're being introduced to Mary and Martha in Luke's account. But in other passages in Scripture, in fact, the Apostle John mentions Mary and Martha a number of times. In fact, you may have picked up on it by now, but Mary and Martha were the sisters of Lazarus, of who Jesus raised from the dead. He was the one that they had a deep relationship with, and when he found out that his good friend had died, Jesus wept. Right, this is the guy that Jesus wept over, and so this is this family. Jesus was very close with this family, had kind of a unique relationship with this family, and so Luke is kind of introducing us for the first time in his gospel account. We don't know why. This is the one story that Luke chooses to share with us. And what's interesting is that right off the bat, we are introduced to both Mary and Martha, and we see an immediate contrast of what's to take place. Now, Martha, as it says in verse 28, a woman named Martha welcomed him, being Jesus, into her home. Now, back in that day, culturally, women usually didn't own homes. So what most people think is that she was actually a widow at this point, and so Martha had married, and then husband passed away, and so now the house was given to her. It was kind of passed over to her. So the responsibility of being a hostess, the responsibility of this being her home would have obviously fallen to her. As it continued, she had a sister called Mary. So Mary would have been living with Martha and would have had almost like a co-living situation with Martha, and so it would have been Mary's responsibility to help Martha if such an event like this were to occur. But we don't see that exactly happening. In fact, it says she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. Uh-oh. Mary's not where she's supposed to be. Uh-oh. Like verse 1, like right from the get-go, we've already got conflict. Because this is scandalous actually on two levels. See, because Mary was not supposed to be sitting at the feet of a rabbi. That's not where women would have sat in that culture back in that day. In fact, it would have been a place for men. It would have been a place for that rabbi's disciples. And yet here Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus. And notice that Jesus doesn't send her away. In fact, Jesus welcomed this kind of cultural rebellion, if you will, because he's like, of course women can come and sit at my feet and to glean from the teachings of Scripture and to learn. Absolutely. We're not going to discriminate here, so Jesus welcomed that. So already it's scandalous on that level. And then the other level is the fact that Mary's not in the kitchen. Let's be honest, she's not in the kitchen. They just had 12 or 13 guys show up to their house. There are things to do. It's kind of like when the dwarves show up at Bilbo's house, right? Like it's chaos. There's so much stuff to do, and Mary's just sitting on the floor. Like, come on, Mary, step your game up. Martha's the one that is being responsible. Or she's the one that's on duty. She's the one that's taking everything and running with it and making sure that things get done, and Mary is the one that's being lazy. But that's not how Luke really records it, is it? That's how we look at it. Well, like, of course, Martha is being the super responsible one and Mary's being lazy, but that's not how Luke records it, right away you get a sense of really who's kind of in the wrong here. Right? Because notice that word distracted that Luke uses. In fact, as I studied the Greek, this idea of being distracted in Martha's world, that the Greek was almost giving the indication that she was going above and beyond the cultural norms. That she was going way out of her way. Like, it's like when those special guests come over and you bring out the really fancy soap, right? Like the really good smelling stuff, the stuff that you keep hidden away in the cabinets, right? This would have been what Martha was doing. She was going above and beyond, making sure everything was perfect, making sure everything was pristine, because she knew that Jesus was coming over. But in so much distraction and so much work, she couldn't really be bothered by those that were around her. She couldn't be bothered by anyone that was sitting around her. In fact, she was just so focused on the have-tos and the I must-dos and all the tasks that needed to be done. And yet she's distracted with serving. See, even Luke, when he records it, he sees what Martha is doing as serving. In fact, in church, we would like to use these kinds of phrases. For you, if you've grown up in church at all, the church people would usually say, "Oh, she's just got a servant's heart." You ever said that to somebody? Right? Like she's just got a servant's heart. In fact, we might even go one step further. Oh, she's just exercising her spiritual gift of hospitality. Right? We make up these almost these like super Christianese way of saying it, like, oh, just let her run around like a crazy person. Just don't have her ask me to help, please. Like you're like, yeah, no, we just want you to go and bless, use your gifts, absolutely, but I'm not helping. That's not my game. Right? But this would have been what Martha's attitude was, as she was so distracted. And what I find interesting is, as I was looking at my own life, and I wonder how many of us are distracted on a pretty regular basis in our own lives, just day in, day out, how often we are distracted. But then outside of that, I wonder how many of us actually make excuses for our distraction. That we look at our calendars and our schedules and we make these excuses because we're like, no, Kenny, you don't understand. I have to do this stuff. Like, if I don't do this stuff, I don't even want to know what's going to happen. Like, I am literally holding the very fabric of the universe together by my to-do list. Like, I've got to get this stuff done. And that's how we operate. We operate as though our to-do lists are the be-all, end-all. And we get so distracted by the things, the must-haves. And I can just see it. I can just see it. Martha's reaction in this story, as I love reading passages of Scripture like this, where it's just kind of this story that gives us a few details, right? But I like to really put myself in the story, because I believe this is a real event with real people, like this actually happened. And so I like to give a little drama to the situation, because that's probably what was going on, right? Like Luke is a physician. He's very precise. He's very get to the point. He's kind of like Pastor Steve, where it's like, yep, you ever have a conversation with him? It's like, yep, nope, that's it, yep, it's there, okay, good, and we're off and running, right? Like this is very precise, right? This isn't a whole lot of running around here, but I love to add a little drama, because again, this is the truth, right? Like this is real people. So I can just imagine, maybe you're not like me, maybe you're a perfect person, I'm imperfect, that's okay, I can be the one imperfect person in the room, but I know I've done this. Right, because you can imagine Martha sitting in, doing the dishes, doing her thing, right, scrubbing away, and the disciples and Mary, they're in the other room, right? They may have had a door, they may not have been an open room, who knows? But they're in there laughing, have a good time. Like imagine after Christmas dinner, you're the one doing all the Christmas dinner dishes, right, the mounds of them, and everyone's in the other room around the tree, playing with other cool stuff, laughing and having a good time. You'd be frustrated. And you can imagine, this is something I think about. I just imagine like Luke or John or somebody's like, Jesus, remember when you healed that guy and like his arm like grew back? Like, bro, that was crazy, right? Like they're losing their mind, they're joking and whatever. And Martha's in the kitchen scrubbing away, just going like, just doing the classic, like no words are coming out, but man, she is so frustrated and she's just like, yeah, that's right. I mean, I can just imagine, like, if they had wood, like dishes or whatnot, like, she's literally, like, carving wood away because she's so frustrated. In fact, it gets to the point where she's, like, just seething. I can just see, like, the foam starting to form in the side of her mouth. Like, she's just all, steam's rolling the whole bit. Because if you look at verse 40, this is how crazy she's getting. She goes, but Martha was distracted much serving. And so she goes up to him. This is Jesus. Okay, this is Martha talking to Jesus. She goes, Lord, listen to this sentence really carefully because this is so Christianese language. Anyway, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to help me. Like, again, could there be any better sentence to, like, plead for Jesus' heart where she's like, Lord, like, you can just see it. Lord, do you not care that your servant is slaving away in the kitchen, doing all the dishes, all the preparations? Do you not care that I'm serving on my own? Tell my sister to get her hind end in here to help me because I'm working my fingers to the bone here. She's making me look bad in front of you. Like, come on. Right? You just imagine how frustrated she is because she is speaking through Jesus to Mary. Like, she's going, if I can't get Mary to come in and help me, maybe Jesus will. Right? Like, and when that thing where you say something to someone, but really you're saying it to someone else. How many of y'all have done that? I know I've done that many times. You're like, yeah, come and help me. And you give them the eyes, right? Where you're like, yeah, that's right, Mary. I'm talking to you. And you read this right away, and Martha is so frustrated, and then you read it, and you're like, yeah, you get it, girl. Like, go get that help. Like, go on, yeah. She's not going to help you disrespecting you in front of Jesus. Like, this is your house. This is your rules. Like, I know that as a parent. Like, it's like, not in my house, right? Like, no, like, you go get that help, girl. Absolutely. And you feel for her. You're like, man, stuff has to get done. Martha, you got stuff that's got to get done. Get some help. And you almost expect Jesus halfway to get on her side. Where you're almost like, yeah, of course, Jesus, when people come to you with needs and ask, especially when they ask so politely, right? Then of course, Jesus is going to be like, all right, sorry, Martha, sorry, Mary, please, if you would, go help your sister. You can come back after you're done. We'll wait for the stories. Maybe like 10 minutes. Like, you guys got 10 minutes to finish the dishes and come back. No, that's not what Jesus does at all. He doesn't make excuses for Mary. In fact, it says this to end the story. He says, but the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha. And when you see two words like that in the English language, back to back, in the Greek, it was given an indication that this was said with like a deep and very much a desired focus of attention. Like, if you guys have kids and they're being a little bit disrespectful, they're being a little crazy and wild, but you're trying to get them to focus up, like, this would have been Jesus' equivalent of being like, hey, I need to see your eyes. Can I see your eyes? I make sure you're listening. Eyes, right here, eyes. Yep, nope, I still don't see them. I want you to listen to what I have to say. Let me see your eyes. I say that to my kids all the time because they're just, like, they're gnats. I don't know whose kids they are. No one else is like that in our family. I don't understand it at all, yeah. But when he says, Martha, Martha, I'm glad you guys laughed at that so much. Anyway, it says, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. One thing is necessary. One thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. In fact, some translations even say, which will not be taken away from her now or forever. Basically, Jesus is almost having the indication when he's saying this, is saying like, hey, I know, Martha, what you're asking, but no. Mary is not going to go and join you in the kitchen. She's exactly where she's supposed to be. She's exactly where I want her to be. She's not going to go and help you. You are too troubled about way too many things. You need to take a breath, girl. And almost this indication, too, is, again, as you look at the Greek, and again, how some translations will put it, it's like that Jesus is even paralleling this with an eternal perspective of this is not going to be taken away from her. My presence is not going to be taken away from her now or ever. And those are some powerful words by Jesus because, I think Jesus actually shines a light on a very important human condition, right? Because Martha can't catch a break. Like, girl can't catch a break. And yet Jesus speaks to a very important human condition that we get so distracted with the good things in life that we forget about the best thing. We get so distracted by things that we forget about the best thing. We get going and rolling on life and chasing those promotions and signing our kids up for 1,000 activities, right? We get so involved in church stuff. That's right, I'm going there tonight. Yeah, we get so involved in church stuff right? That we busy our schedules so much to the brim that we don't actually take time to have a personal relationship with Christ. Like we go so far the other way because we're like, I want to serve you, Jesus, but I'm not going to have a single bit of relationship with you. And we do this over and over and over again to the point where, can I make us uncomfortable just a little bit tonight? Because again, last night, so I'm going to do it. Sometimes when we bring our service to God, or I think sometimes when we declare service to God, like I'm serving you, right? I want to serve you well. I think sometimes our service is actually for ourselves. Because look at how Martha is serving, right? Martha is more concerned about her stuff. She's saying, hey, Jesus, ask my sister to help me in what I'm doing, because what I see I'm doing is incredibly important. Not giving any thought to what Mary may be doing is just as, if not more important. And so we take this idea of serving and we almost make it that excuse of, no, you don't understand. I'm serving God. But really at the end of the day, I almost think we're serving ourselves because we're still trying to prove ourselves to God. We're still trying to earn the Father's love. And that's the human condition. The human condition of, I can do this on my own. I can do this life on my own. And this idea of earning the Father's love, let me remind us of something tonight. God cannot love you any more or less than He loves you right now. His love is perfect, and it will always be that way. It will always stay that way. There is nothing you can do or not do that will cause God to love you any more or any less. He loves you exactly and perfectly where you are right here, sitting here tonight. He loves you so much. So much. And that will not ever change. But see, Jesus just wants us to have a relationship with Him. That's why the Christian walk is so simple. It's not simplistic because relationships are not simplistic. Can I hear an amen? Like, come on. Like, relationships are not simplistic, but it's simple. It's about a relationship. That's really what the Christian walk is about. And that relationship is with Jesus. It's for us to love Him and for Him to love us back. But we get so busy trying to earn His love that we forget that. And we forget to slow down. We forget to sit still long enough to actually have a relationship with Him. Now it's going to get really uncomfortable. Because how many of us know that signing our kids up for a bunch of activities is not going to keep them off drugs? Only Jesus is going to do that. Right? Do you know that activities are not going to keep your kids from getting sucked into pornography? Only Jesus is. Right? In fact, my wife and I kind of laughed as we said this one out loud, but activities are not going to keep your kids in church. In fact, it's almost going to repel them from church because Lord knows, and I was one of those kids, I was a tournament baseball player. There were plenty of games on Sundays. There were plenty of times where it was like, well, guess we're not going to church again for like the 4th or 5th week in a row. Because our schedules are packed so tight with all these activities. Only Jesus is going to satisfy what you, your children, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your spouse, whatever anyone's looking for, only Jesus is going to satisfy that. Only through the person of Jesus will that be satisfied. In fact, He is the good portion. He is the good portion. We cannot let ourselves get distracted with all the have-tos that we find in life. All these things we must do. We cannot let ourselves get distracted by those. And this is yet another reminder for us today that we cannot serve our way into God's kingdom. We cannot serve our way into God's kingdom. We cannot earn God's favor and by impressing Him with our preparations and with our service. We just simply can't do it. It is only by the person of Jesus that we are set free. It's not by our efforts, but it's only by His finished work on the cross. Jesus is not going to look at your efforts and go, ha! There it is! You did it! Finally, I've been waiting for eons for you to get there. Like, you've been climbing this ladder for so long. Let me just say, well done. Woohoo! No, he's not going to do that. Any more than he was going to taste Martha's lamb and go, oh, you're in. Right? Like that lamb, mwah, I want you cooking for eternity, girl. That's what I'm saying, right? Like, no, like that's not how it works. And we say it like that. We're like, that's ridiculous. But that's how we live. That's how we live day in, day out. We live that somehow what we bring to the table is going to trump Jesus. That somehow that our work is going to finally let us in. That our work, what we do or how we just, whatever it is, like that's finally going to be it. Finally, Jesus is going to go, wow, you cracked the code. Well done. Martha, you spiced that lamb just right. Oh, who knew? No, it is only through Jesus that we find our salvation, our freedom, our peace, and our joy. I believe that Jesus is saying to us tonight, church, that we need to trade the dishes for the floor. We need to trade the must-dos, the must-haves, the things that we have to get done. We need to trade those things for the floor, that we need to